Hello, my name is Edward Bevington and I'm one of the maintainers of Drashland, and I'm going to be talking about handling optional path parameters and how to use them within Drash. So if we refer to the documentation, we can see there is information about using optional parameters. I should note that this feature hasn't currently been released yet, but it will be released as of Drash version 1.2.0. So how we use optional parameters is adding a question mark at the end of the parameter name. You can have as many parameters as you want, but required parameters, if the path does have a required parameter, they should precede optional parameters. So now let's jump into a demonstration and example and see how it all comes together. So we have two resources that we're going to use in our demonstration, a files resource and a users resource. The files resource does demonstrate optional parameters and shows how we can use it to account for optional parameters being passed in and not being passed in. So how it will work is it will take the URL path and read that from the file system. So for example, we have a files directory here and it has a few files and directories within, and it's just going to read the file contents in this resource. The second resource we have is a users resource. We have a basic users property, and it's going to demonstrate how you can run certain different logic based on the optional parameters passed in. For example, if age was passed in, which is the last optional parameter, then maybe we could do something with the ID, name, and age, but the age isn't required. If the name is passed in, then we know the ID is set as well, so we can do something with just the ID and name. Else we could just do something with the ID, which is how a resource would usually handle with required path parameters. So we have our server set up now. So let's run this. And I should also note that I am passing all permissions to the file just for demonstration purposes, but it's not recommended. And I am implicitly using the master branch of Drash just so I have access to the optional parameters feature. So let's first go over the files resource. So let's have a nice curl request. Point it to the files resource, and let's say we want to read the file 1.txt. There we go, there's a problem with that typo. There we go. Now we can see that the content responded is the content within the file. Now say if requested we wanted to go a little bit deeper, we could go files2 / files3 / file3.txt. There we go. And now we see that it's grabbed the content from that file. And just to make sure we know it is, we could just change that quickly. Run another curl request, and there we go. We know. So that's one way of demonstrating how we can use optional parameters, to traverse a file system, or when a parameter isn't required to be passed in, but it can be. The next example we're going to move on to is the users resource. So let's pass in, for example, let's pass in just an ID of 1. I guess return the data. It will return the exact same data for each conditional, but hopefully it demonstrates that we can run different logic based on the parameters passed in. So as you can see, we don't need to pass in a name or an age, and the resource will it won't find the resource, won't match the path if we do not have the ID passed in. It will if we add an ending slash, and we can also pass in a name, and how when a name is passed in but not an age, it will get the user by the name. So we should see the response is that exact object. So let's try that. There we go. And we can see it's getting by the name. And let's try by the age. So for example purposes, we can just add in an incorrect age that we don't have, 53, not found. But we were trying to get the user by the age. Now let's add in the correct age. There we go. So the reason why optional parameters can be good is because the resource can accept requests for routes where a parameter might not be required, but it can still be passed in, and this could be, for usefulness. So that's optional parameters in a nutshell. Like I said, you can have as many optional parameters as you want. It can go on forever, but the required parameters must precede the optional parameters. You can have as many as you want, or you can just have one. There we go. So that's it from me. Thank you for watching.